Thou preparest a table before me, Wild Harvest Edibles, Part 59. As you navigate any health challenge, it is always recommended that you partner with a medical practitioner that shares your philosophy of the care of the human body in disease and in health. The information shared in this presentation is meant to educate and improve your wellness toolbox and aid in returning it to health if sick, and maintaining good health when well. It should not be construed as medical advice, simply as tools that have been successfully used by others in similar situations. As always, investigate and verify any treatment protocol or procedure for yourself, not blindly accepting anything without due diligence. Thomas Edison said the doctor of the future will give no medicine, but will instruct his patient in the care of the human frame, in diet and in the cause and prevention of disease. In 1885, it was stated that there are many ways of practicing the healing art, but there is only one way that heaven approves. God's remedies are the simple agencies of nature that will not tax or debilitate the system through their powerful properties. Pure air and water, cleanliness, a proper diet, purity of life, and a firm trust in God are the remedies for the want of which thousands are dying. Yet these remedies are going out of date because their skillful use requires work that the people do not appreciate. Fresh air, exercise, pure water, and clean, sweet premises are within the reach of all, with but little expense. But drugs are expensive, both in the outlay of means and the effect produced upon the system. That was written in 1885. 3 John 1 verse 2 says, Beloved, I pray that you may prosper in all things and be in health, just as your soul prospers. We need to take care of our souls so the rest of our body can be in health. Romans 12:1 and 2 says, I beseech you therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable to God, which is your reasonable service. And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. Today we'll start by looking at soapberry, Shepherdea canadensis. It's also known as russet buffalo berry or foam berry. The russet form of the buffalo berry is the bright red berry. The berries can come in different colors. It likes forest edges and sandy shorelines, rocky slopes is a favorite habitat for the soapberry. It grows as tall as it is wide, about 3 to 8 feet tall, and has rust-colored flakes or scales that are present, as you can see in the lower picture, on the stems and on the leaves. The flowers, you can see in the picture, are a subtle yellow, and their stamens extend beyond the pistil and their petals, just under 0.16 inches wide, very tiny. Late spring can be solitary or bunched. The ones I have seen have been mostly solitary. I haven't seen soapberry or buffalo berry be in the clusters as shown in the picture above, in the places where I've seen it, but it certainly has that capacity. The berry can be orange or red tinged to 0.3 inches long or diameter. The leaves are opposite and entire. You can see that they're oval to elliptical in shape. The upper surface is dark green, the underside can be speckled silver, and again the rust-colored spots are present. You can see the blossom again in the upper right picture with the rust-colored spots, and they maintain that rust-colored spot all through its life cycle. It can be 1/2 to 2.5 inches long. The edible part of this plant is the fruit. So when you're harvesting it, late summer to fall, they can remain on the bush through the winter time. The fresh fruit are kind of bitter to taste. They tend to sweeten a little bit after several frosts. It can make an aromatic jelly. The fresh berries can be refrigerated for some time and used over the course of time. And you can also freeze or dry them for long-term use. There's something called soapberry ice cream. Sometimes it's referred to as Indian ice cream. Just 1 cup of soap berries, and 1/2 cup of water and 4 tablespoons of sugar. You're going to mix the berries, water, and sugar together and crush the berries into the sugar. So use some kind of a mashing device. And then whisk and mix into a foam or froth to the texture of whipping cream. You can top it with fresh blueberries or raspberries, whatever happens to be in season, or even with frozen berries. So one thing to keep in mind is you don't want to eat high volumes of these because they contain saponins. The saponins are beneficial but can also in excess be negative, so don't overconsume them. They can cause nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. Can be possible outcomes if eaten in excess. So just keep that in mind. Some medicinal uses. It's a hemostatic, so essentially it can function to stop bleeding using the berries. It's hypotensive. Can help to lower blood pressure, so just be cautious with that. If you have already lower blood pressure, you don't want to lower it excessively. Additionally, a stomachic, which essentially promotes appetite. You can see stomach in that word, and it can aid digestion, so it could be beneficial digestive aid, kind of promoting the motility and absorption of the stomach. The berries can help to lower blood pressure. The juice of the berries, again, aid digestion. And a decoction of the stem and leaf can be just a general stomach tonic. Can relieve constipation, aid digestion, and also lower elevated blood pressure. The juice of the berry can be applied to presentations of eczema or psoriasis to help reduce the irritation. Our next species is looking at Douglas fir, Pseudotsuga menziesii. It's a coniferous tree, an evergreen. It grows to 200 feet tall, has a pyramidal crown, drooping lower branches that droop down towards the ground. As it ages, it becomes cylindrical, and the crown to 130 feet high. And that is the trunk can be that tall before the crown actually presents itself. The cones, the male and female are on the same branch. So this is a monoecious plant, and then it has one house for both the male and female parts of the plant. The lower right, you can see all the male cones. In fact, in the springtime, when the wind blows, the pollen from cedars and Douglas firs can just create a cloud in the sky. The male are many, many rusty small cones that shed their pollen and then fall off. The female, the cone is retained. It's in the green state when it receives the pollen, and then matures. They become woody as they mature and then drop, and sometimes you can find squirrel middens, which are the leftover scales of squirrels having devoured the seeds of the Douglas fir cones. Here's a series of the trees at different stages in its lifespan. You can see the high trunk. Typically speaking, the Douglas fir deciduously loses its branches and has a nice tall trunk, unlike other trees that sometimes will have their branches right to the ground, like cedars, for example. You can see that the needle presentation is more like a kind of like a bottle brush in nature in the lower or the central right picture. Around the stem it has green flat needles, and you can see that it has two white bands that are underneath the needles. This is a nice close-up picture of the Douglas fir, and it's very fragrant when crushed. And we're told that the fragrance of the pine and the cedars is very beneficial to health. So crushing them aromatically has health benefits. It's part of what is the benefit of forest bathing. That is essentially taking a hot walk in the woods, and especially during the warm summer days where the oils are released into the air. They've done some research with that, showing that that has a residual effect even a month following exposure. So they did this experiment with students, medical students, in an urban setting, just diffusing the oils as well with therapeutic benefits for increased immune function for a protracted period of time following. So they can grow up to an inch and a half long on the stem. The edibility, the young shoots, and the inner bark. So here's a collection of the young shoots. They are very easy to collect in the spring, only available in the spring. You can make a pine needle tea any time of the year, but the shoots are very, very nice and tender. Pluck the new growth in the spring. You can eat them raw, or you can brew them into a tea and to flavor salads and savory dishes. You can use the inner bark. It can be dried and ground into a flour. You have to use a shaving tool or an axe to access the inner bark. And they can be used along with grains to extend the flour. So use a food processor. You can use those bark flakes and grind them up into a powder form. So here's some inner bark bread. So 3/4 cup pine bark powder to 1 1/4 cup wheat flour or similar. You can use semolina, any kind of flour, brown rice flour. 1 cup cold water, 1 teaspoon salt. And that's a pretty typical ratio. This looks a little chunky. You might want to use grind it up to a little finer flour in this little biscuit up above. There's a finer bark bread down below that looks more bread-like. Preheat the oven to 350 degrees. Mix the ingredients into a dough. You can form it into rolls or loaves as you wish and bake for 35 to 45 minutes. You can add a sweetener or savory flavors to the bread as well that can bring it to the taste of your choice. Finally, we have chai tea, Doug fir style. So 1 cup of Doug fir needles, it can be dry or fresh. 1 tablespoon of dried orange peel. You can use a tablespoon of cinnamon chips. It's optional. 1 tablespoon of green cardamom pods. You can crush them slightly to release their constituents. And 1 tablespoon of dried ginger. Add some honey. You can steep that mixture in boiling water for 5 to 7 minutes. Now the picture in the background there looks like it's a different kind of looks like more like a noble fir branch there, but the Douglas fir can be used in the same manner. The medicinal benefits, antiseptic properties, stops or slows microbial growth, and you can use the pitch for similar types of things. It's an antiheromatic as well, which helps to aid joint pain from arthritis. You could use that externally as a topical wash as well as internally. So you can look for more of edible wild plants and medicinal uses at www.preparingforthetimeoftrouble.com.